Pope Francis has celebrated an open-air Mass in Edmonton's Commonwealth Stadium, attended by thousands of people. It's the biggest event of his 6-day Canadian tour. Mobility issues kept the Pope from actively carrying out many of the rituals of the service. His address or homily contained no further reference to the apology he made yesterday to Indigenous peoples about the Church's role in residential schools. Instead, it focused largely on the theme of grandparents to mark the feast day of Jesus Christ's own grandparents, Saints Anne and Joachim. Now, Ashley Callingbull could have attended that Mass, but she chose not to. Ashley is a member of the Enoch Cree First Nation, which borders Edmonton's west side, and her grandparents were forced to attend residential schools. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you didn't want to be at Commonwealth Stadium today for the Mass. Why not?
I just feel like, an apology isn't enough. There were so many things that we could have used that $35 million for. Instead of, bringing him out here and getting roads paved, we could have used that money towards clean water for First Nations community that don't even have access. Could have used it for programs for our culture and language revitalization. Could have used it for infrastructure for communities. There are so many things that money could have been used for, but I completely understand if some survivors and family members needed that apology and that's what they need to move forward. But for me and my family, an apology just isn't enough. It's actions that are going to make a difference.
So given that, what did you make of his words delivered yesterday in the form of an apology? And I'm wondering whether or not you even took in the homily today.
Today I didn't watch. Yesterday it was really, really hard to watch that. And then also watching the woman singing "O Canada" and crying, you could just see the pain. Yesterday was a very, very heavy day for all of us. We cried. My family is, going through some things, and all Indigenous people are. And I feel like he didn't address the sorries for the other injustices that these nuns have and these priests have put on our children, those crimes that are not okay. And that's another form of action. Those who are still alive need to be prosecuted. And these things, weren't acknowledged in that speech. And then, seeing the headdress being placed on him, that hurt because, to us, that's incredibly sacred. But as Indigenous peoples, we're known as very giving, and, being hurtful or carrying pain is not our way. That's how we move forward. But for me, I just felt like that was unnecessary. But for others, that's all they needed was the apology. But for me and my family, me coming from intergenerational trauma and being a product of all of that, I feel like so much more needs to be done, and we need to dissolve the doctrine of discovery right now.
You mentioned there that your grandparents, of course, were forced to attend residential schools. And I'm certain, of course, it sounds like you guys are all on the same page in terms of how you're viewing this visit and the message from the Pope. Did your grandparents also watch alongside you? And what did they have to say?
My grandma, my kukum, is no longer with us, but my grandfather, my mushum, he can't watch it. He's always had an extremely difficult time talking about what happened to him. And, he has permanent scars for the rest of his life. The first time he spoke his language, the only language he's known, they threw hot boiling water on him. And now he lives with those scars. It's like a daily reminder. So for the Pope to come here and just give another apology that it's just words, we need action. That's the only way we're going to heal. Reparations need to be made.
You mentioned how yesterday was a very challenging day, and certainly we heard that from many survivors, relatives of survivors who were watching this, just in general members of the community and viewers too, that it was very challenging to watch all of that. Was today sort of a day of protest, or was it a day of rest for you?
I'm still trying to process everything, honestly. Yesterday, it was a lot to process. I felt so many feelings. At first, I was angry, but I can't let that take over. And then I was hurt and I was sad. And I had to look up some Native comedy humor, to make myself feel better, because that's what we're Natives are known for, is, our humor. That's our way of healing as well. So that actually helped me a lot. And today, I've just kind of been reflecting, the past is something I can't change. But the future, we can. The future we are in control of. And it's really up to their actions that are going to really make a difference. And for me, I'm still processing it. it's hard to see our people still hurting. And, there's so much that needs to be done. A sorry just isn't enough.
And you mentioned that the money, the funds used to bring the Pope here for this visit, you believe could have been better directed to helping communities. For example, right now, many of which still have boil water advisories. Also, you mentioned, the doctrine of discovery too, that was something that you had hoped would have been mentioned or addressed. So how disappointing was it that didn't happen?
Very disappointing. But, I expected a cookie cutter apology. I didn't really expect the most because, all we've had is apologies so far. And I feel like this is just another way for people to brush it off. And now I'm worried that people will say things like, well, he apologized, now get over it. A lot of people tell us, Indigenous peoples, that we should get over what happened in the past, but so much of living through the trauma, so much of us have addictions that can't deal with what happened. And, a lot of those kids that did escape the school, they don't know how to be parents because of what happened to them, and they lost their way. So we're still suffering the effects of these schools. And, to just say, I'm incredibly sorry, and then get a headdress, it's not enough for me, and it's not enough for my family. But, I'm just speaking on behalf of us. It might be, good. What people needed to hear was an apology. Maybe that's a way of closing that chapter for others. But for me, there's so much more that we can do for our First Peoples in this country.
So to your point, of course, there were some individuals who were very moved by his words, who felt that it was very valuable for them to hear that. Of course, that is dependent on how people feel, where they are in their healing journey as well. Wondering what you think then the next steps should be from here as the process, the journey to reconciliation continues.
Well, like I said, they need to dissolve that doctrine of discovery now, because what happened was they basically allowed genocide, saying that that's okay. And it's not. People need to know the truth, and they need to see where our true history is. And reparations need to be made, and prosecution for those that are still alive that committed these horrible crimes on these innocent children. They need to be prosecuted. There's so many things that need to be done to heal within our own communities. But, for some, if an apology helps them heal, that their opinion is completely valid. Any feeling that anyone is feeling, it's valid. So we all heal in our own way. But I feel like for me, we need to focus on the future so our future generations don't suffer, and that they don't live through this trauma cycle. Because, I'm also a product of intergenerational trauma. My abuser, he was abused by his parents, who were abused in residential school. And yesterday I thought about it. I thought, what if residential schools never existed? Maybe none of that would have happened to me. And it was hard to think about, but now I can't let the past control me. But I can, think about ways that I can give back and that I can help, and how I can use my voice, because, using our voice is so powerful. And, saying sorry isn't going to cut it, but now it's all about action. So whatever actions they're going to take forward, I hope they are good ones, and I hope they mean them with good intentions, and that they actually do make a difference, because we really need to heal.
Ashley, I know this is a challenging topic, of course, to discuss, and it can be difficult. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and your thoughts with us. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Ashley Callingbull is in Saskatoon. She's a member of the Enoch Cree First Nation, and her grandparents were forced to attend residential schools. Thanks for joining us.